Hey everybody, it's Tom. Now today we're going to talk about union queries, and I'm going to walk you through what they are, how to use them, and I'm also going to tell you why I actually hate them. And just dislike them? No, I kind of hate them. Anyway, that's what we're going to learn today is all about union queries, so stay tuned. Hi, I'm Tom Hinkle, and I teach you about Excel, SQL, and lots of other cool stuff. All right, so let's get to it, and we're going to start like we have in the other videos in this series by looking at Excel. Now, what a union query does is it will take three tables or three select statements and combine them all together. So right here we've got a Minnesota table, a North Carolina table, and a South Carolina. A union is just going to put those three together, okay? Now, I will give you one little tip here. So there have been times where there have been an interview question of what is the difference between a join and a union. And the best way to answer that is a join adds columns. A union adds rows. So that's the basic definition of a union. Now, why would you ever want to do that? First of all, you've got two tables with the same column headings, the same fields and everything. Why wouldn't they be in the same table? Well, whether we like it or not, many of us have had situations like this, where we have data coming in individual files, and maybe there's one for each month. It's the same format every month, but we get a new file every month, and as much as we try, we can't get a delivery any better than that. This would be one reason for a union. Another is combining information from several different sources, but you know it needs to end up in one place. And in that case, you might have to do some work to get the same columns in there. But those are a couple examples of why you would want to do a union. So that being said, let's talk about just a couple of things before we bounce over to SQL that have to be true with the union. First off is, in your union queries, you have to have the exact same number of fields. They can have different names, but they have to be the same data type. So for example, if I've got text here and last name, I've got to have text here in the third column as well. This could be called something different, but it's still got to be text. If I've got a numeric value here, it's got to be numeric down below, and so on. If you got a date field, it's got to be a date down below. So those have to line up perfectly. Again, it doesn't have to be the column heading, but it does have to be the same data type to union them together. Well, we've looked at it a little bit. I think you guys get the idea. So let me bounce over to my SQL Server, and we'll just go through how to do unions in SQL Server. All right, so I have already loaded these tables into SQL Server. So if I do my select here, you can look at them. And down here, I've got my North Carolina table, my South Carolina table, and my Minnesota table. All right, now let's see how the union works and see how simple it is, okay? So with a union, you can use either the field names or you can use the asterisk or the wildcard. And most times people use a wildcard. Okay, so all you have to do is say select star from DBO names, first table, union, and then do another select, union, do another select. As long as these three select statements have the same number of fields with the same data type, it's going to work. So let's run this together. And now we've got one big table with all of our records in it. So that's all the union does. It combines tables on a row basis. It adds the information to the bottom, kind of like an append. Okay, well now I'm going to look at a couple tables here. I've got a Minnesota and a Minnesota bad table to show you something that can happen. So in my first table, Minnesota, I've got first name, last name, social security number, address, city, state, and birthday. And in the second table, I've got table number, first name, last name, address, city, state, and birthday. So you see the fields aren't the same. Now, one of the things I was going to do is try to actually do this with the field names. You can do that as well with unions instead of the asterisks. So I've put the field names in, and I want to see that union with field names first. All right, so I'll highlight all of these to go down and do my union. Hit execute. And that worked too, just by doing the field names. But now, if I try to do the same with the table bad Minnesota that doesn't have all the fields, watch what happens. I get an error because I don't have the same fields and don't have the same data types, okay? Now, one other thing, something I want you to start noticing, we've got 3 tables here. Look how big this union is starting to get. And we're not even doing anything very complex in here yet. So we've got a pretty long statement for appending these 3 tables together. This is one of the reasons I'm not a fan of union, because what I'm really talking about and not being a fan is when people union together 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 things, then your union statement gets to be so big it's really tough to maintain down the road. And I'm going to show you an alternative to that I think is a little better. But just notice how big it can start getting as you keep unioning everything together. Okay, so the alternative that I'm going to suggest is using a temporary table and append statements, or even a permanent table. So using an append approach, what we're going to do is we're only going to process one table at a time. We're going to append that table to our temp table or whatever else we're going to create, and you'll see how that works. So let's go ahead and create our temp table. Now, to create a temp table in SQL, if you haven't done it before, you just put a hashtag in front of the table name. And what that means is it will stay around, that table will stay around during your session of SQL, but then when you exit SQL, it'll go away. You can also drop it if you want to as well. But now that I'm working with it, it'll work like a regular table till I'm out of this session. So let me execute this, and I will put the Minnesota names into my temp table. And now I'm going to insert the North Carolina name. So I just do my insert statement into temp all, and then here's the values. So I'll insert those in, and I'll insert the South Carolina ones and hit execute. And now I can select all from temp first. And it brought me back my entire data set that I put in. The other thing I can do is I can start using that temp table to write other queries. Now I can do select from temp all, like Minnesota, and I get Minnesota. This is another reason the temp table approach is a little better, because I can continue to use it. When you use a union, sometimes you might be assigning it to a table anyway. And if you are, then this is the method you should use. But now let me go ahead and I'm going to delete the Minnesota records, and we're going to see about putting the bad Minnesota into the temp table. So I'll go ahead and click execute there and make sure that they're gone. So now let's see about inserting that bad Minnesota table into the temp table, because I don't have all the fields. So I'm just doing a standard insert statement, but I don't have all the fields of that table, and I'm just bringing in the fields from bad Minnesota that are available. So let's go ahead and load those up. And those loaded in, 10 rows loaded in. Now let's look at that. And we got it. Minnesota came back in, but look, Social Security number is null. It just didn't load in. And you could do that technically up on a traditional union, but it's a little easier and a little more straightforward here. So now that we know how to do a union, let me expand a little bit on why I think they're generally a bad idea to use in coding, and why I think the append approach is better. We already saw one for readability. Again, you're going to have, even though this insert seems longer, every insert is just handling one table. So if you have any maintenance to do or something changes, from my experience, it's a lot easier to debug this or to update and change this. Even though it might look a little bit more, over time, it's going to be easier to maintain this. If you start getting some custom calculations, those are really tough to maintain on a union query that unions together 4, 5, 6, 7 different tables. Okay? So the other thing I want to talk about outside of readability, why I don't like unions, is performance. Unions kill performance. Now joins do too, and we'll save that for another video. Joins you kind of have to keep. They're kind of foundational to SQL. But for unions, let me show you what's going on here. I'll go back here and go to this tables tab. So let's say I have a union query where I'm going to union together 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. I'm going to union together 7 tables, okay? So the way SQL works is That's all viewed as one statement, unioning those 7 together. So look at all the records in those. In this first table, I got 660,000. Then I got 156. Then I have 123. Then 366. So SQL has to put all of these queries together in memory and work on it like one big piece of work. And it has to do all the processing before it will return you the results of that union. Okay, so not only do you have a ton of records in there, but if you've got some if statements in here, some window functions, some other, you're doing some coalescing, maybe you've got some other intricate formulas in here. If each table has some custom functions, those all have to be processed in the same batch as well at the same time. So you're just exponentially growing the amount of memory that SQL needs to do that process. That's why the union takes so long. Okay? Now some of you are saying, well, it doesn't take that long on the cloud, and you're exactly right. If you're working on the cloud, the one thing you have is a lot more resources. This situation with the union it really impacts you if you're working on an individual machine or one with limited RAM. If you're able to go to the cloud and have a system or a database that has 500 to 1,000 gigabytes of RAM, or you can just get more when you need it, then unions might be okay. But basically, they're memory hogs. And that's another reason why if you process one table at a time, it's going to be really, really fast. You're going to have to do 8 things, but those 8 things are going to come back exponentially faster than doing them all together in one big chunk. All right, well, I hope that makes sense. If you guys have any questions on unions, feel free to email me, DM me, and let me know what you think. Again, with 1 or 2 tables, it's probably okay to do union, but I'm just out of the habit. I don't like doing them, and you get to make your own call. All right, talk to you later.